Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another TnS Weekly Review. This week we'll be going over all of the bangers and big plays from Monday, August 25th to Friday, August 29th. So let's just jump right into it. Let's find our first setup. All right, so our first play is going to be from Monday, August 25th, right at 10:10 a.m., or really 10:20 a.m. And it's basically this setup here that we're focusing on. It gets tagged in at 10:20. Right here, you can see the TP is basically for 38 points using the regular TnS TP, 35-point stop. TP is for 38 points, but if you held for buy side, you could have got uh, about like 45 points, um, and it peaked about at 92. So just to show you guys what it looks like at the peak, I'm just gonna fast forward it here. You can see it did peak at 92, and really it didn't really have a true buy side target, but I would say that this high right about here for about 45 points would be the buy side target there. So let's go ahead and add this to our list. Okay, so moving on to our second setup. This one comes from August 26th, which is Tuesday, basically at 9:52 a.m. And it was a very nice long setup that you could have held for the entire day. So this play basically gets tagged in right about here. The 1 minute has a 25-point stop. Gets tagged in. The original TP, let's see how many points it was for. The original TP was only for 21 points using the higher entry here, but if you held for buy side, you basically could have got 57 points. But like I said, you could have held this for the entire day. So I'm just going to fast forward till it's buy side. You can see you could have got 57 points there, but then I'm going to fast forward it to show you could have held this for the entire day, and it actually peaked at 138 points. So I'm going to move this to 138 so you guys can just visualize it here. And now I'm going to fast forward it all the way to basically the end of the day, which is at like 4 p.m. It really went higher than 138 points. But just to keep it realistic, the average person is probably not going to hold the trade past like 4 p.m. Okay, so here we are basically at 4 o'clock at the end of the day. Realistically, the average person is going to close this trade at 4, but the trade peaked at 138 points right at 353. And yeah, basically a very, very nice play. You can see it never did come back to the original entry, and it ended up being a very, very nice play. So let's go ahead and add this to our list. Okay, so moving on to setup number 3, we're actually focusing on this setup down here, specifically this entry here. It basically was the play of the week for TnS. Now, of course, there were a couple setups that failed to get even down to this last bullish setup that we had, but this one truly got tagged into the absolute tick, bottom tick, the entry, and it was basically low of the session, and it ran for about 90 points to the regular TnS TP, so about 90 points there. 35-point stop just for the regular TP 90 points. But if you held for buy side, you could have got like about 169 points there, and then it peaked out at 231 points. So first, I'm just going to show you, it got the original TP. Now, yes, there was a short in here. The short actually failed, because the long had to work. But yeah, basically 169 points at buy side, then it peaks at 231 points there. So let's move this up so we can see it. I'm just going to fast forward it here. Okay, right about there. So yeah, 231 points at the very, very peak, and that was basically at like 350. So that was a pretty nice trade. You basically caught like low of session, maybe even low of day there. But it was a very nice trade. So that's going to be um, play number 3 added to our list. Okay, moving on to our final setup for the weekly review. This time, jumping back to the 1 minute TnS. This one is from Friday the 29th, right at 10 o'clock. It was basically this A plus short. Now I'll get into why it's A plus right after I explain this short. But this one basically ran 106 points to sell side, and then you peaked at like 143 points. So gets the entry there. Or sorry, let me switch the settings to 25-point stop here. Okay, so we got our 25-point stop, and then it basically, if you look all the way to the left here, this low way down here would have been your sell side target. This one right here, pretty much. And that was, the target for 106 points. Sorry. And just to play it out for you guys, you can see it did get tagged in. The original TP for it was for 38 points. And it did run all the way down to that sell side target and then some. You could have held basically 443 points is what it peaked at. This is a pretty nice trade. Got a little retracement there, but then it did come back down. Right about there. So right about here, you can see it did peak at 143 points. So it was a pretty nice play. I mean, most people probably would have taken everything off probably at that sell side target, but it did peak at 143 points. It was a very nice play. So let's go ahead and add that to our list. Okay. Now I did say that this short here that we just reviewed, trade number 4, it was an A+ short. Now if I go back to the play that happened before it to make it A+, you'll see the indicator actually doesn't even pick it up. It's actually this bearish gap here that has the short. Now the indicator doesn't pick it up because it's too far back. So the indicator, I always say the indicator does 90% of the work, not 100%. The 90% of the work it does is, automate the trades within a radius of like 1,000 candles away. But this setup basically is more than 1,000 candles away because the low that overlaps with the FEG is actually this low right here. Using the Thursday 9:57 a.m. candle. And like I said, the indicator can only look back about 1,000 candles. Using that candle as your entry, it's about 1,376 candles away. So that's, exceeds the indicator, its limit. But it is a valid setup. If I zoom in here, using our 3-point edge offset rule, 3 points away from the FEG, it is 3 points away. It's 3 points and 1 tick away. And of course, it's, 17 points to the other side. It is a valid short. And so you would have entered there. Once again, the indicator didn't show this, so most people didn't take it. But it is there. And you could have shorted this, got an even better entry than the other one, and then still held for sell side, for even more points, just about like 138 points just to the sell side target. And who knows for the the peak, but that's the reason why this was the next play was actually an A+ short, because this one gets its TP here for really about, I think, 19 points or so. Yeah, so the TnS TP there was for like 18 points. But if you held the internal sell side, it was for 46, and then real sell side for about 138, 137. And then as this one gets TP, we immediately form the new short, which is the A+ short, which is the one I just showed you for trade number 4. So pretty much just an honorable mention there. This play as well was a pretty nice short. It just, the indicator didn't really pick it up. It was still a really nice short. So in total, we only had 4 plays to look out for this week, and the reason why is because this week actually wasn't a positive week for the most part for most of the TnS versions. So I did just want to go ahead and show you guys the full weekly stats for each version that I keep track of. TnS on the 5-minute version 1 walked away with 10 points this week with 8 wins and 11 losses, 0.2 R on the week, and that's for TnS on the 5-minute, once again, version 1. TnS version 2 on the 5-minute walks away with minus 53 points with 6 wins and 10 losses, and that's minus 1.5 R. So, it had a pretty decently sized red week for version 2. TnS on the 1-minute with using version 2, with still, what we track, it walked away with minus 12 points, 13 wins and 10 losses, and that's minus 0.4 R. So not too great of a week for TnS on the 5-minute. Version 1 basically like break even, and then version 2 with a real red week. And then we have the 1-minute TnS with basically a little small red week, but still red nonetheless. So it wasn't the greatest week. That's why there's only 4 setups mentioned in the weekly review. But feel free to watch all the daily reviews, guys, if you want to see every single play, because it's all there. That's going to wrap it up for this weekly review, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.